Welcome back to This Day in Scottish History. I'm your host, Colin MacDonald. Today, we revisit a defining moment of resistance during the contentious passage of the Treaty of Union. On November 20th, 1706, in Dumfries, a copy of the treaty was publicly burned, a fiery symbol of protest against the union of Scotland and England. The Treaty of Union, signed in 1706, outlined the terms that would merge the Kingdom of Scotland and the Kingdom of England into the Kingdom of Great Britain. This political union took effect on May 1st, 1707, creating a single parliament in London and forever altering Scotland's sovereignty. While its proponents emphasised the potential economic and military benefits, the treaty was deeply unpopular among the majority of Scots, who viewed it as a betrayal of Scotland's independence and centuries-old identity. The Union wasn't a sudden decision, but rather the culmination of decades of political manoeuvring and economic hardship. Key events, such as the ill-fated Darien Scheme in the late 1690s, left Scotland's economy in ruin. This disastrous colonial venture aimed at establishing a trading settlement in Panama drained the country's resources and left many Scottish elites open to negotiation with England, which promised economic stability in return for union. However, the union wasn't merely a financial solution, it was also England's attempt to secure its northern border and prevent Scotland from aligning with France, a key fear during the War of Spanish Succession. Queen Anne, reigning over both Scotland and England, pushed hard for the union, resulting in the appointment of commissioners to hammer out the details. Despite assurances of equal partnership, the terms heavily favoured England. Scots were granted representation in the new British Parliament, but their numbers were dwarfed by English MPs. Economic concerns loomed large as well. Fears that Scotland's economy would be overwhelmed by English imports, alongside resentment over higher customs duties, fueled opposition across the nation. The treaty's passage through the Scottish Parliament was met with widespread outrage. Petitions with tens of thousands of signatures were presented. Riots broke out in cities such as Edinburgh and Glasgow, and copies of the treaty were burned in defiance. Dumfries, a bustling market town with strong Presbyterian ties, became a focal point for anti-union sentiment. On November 20th, 1706, a crowd gathered in Dumfries to stage a symbolic protest. Presbyterian ministers led the charge, publicly denouncing the treaty as an affront to Scotland's heritage and independence. A copy of the treaty was burned in the town square, accompanied by speeches decrying those who had sold out Scotland for English gold. The event was more than just a protest. It was a declaration of defiance. Many Scots believed the treaty undermined the principles of the Covenant, a foundational element of Presbyterian faith that emphasised Scotland's distinctiveness in both governance and religion. The burning of the treaty in Dumfries became a rallying cry for those opposed to the Union, galvanising resistance across the country. Though the protests were passionate, they were not enough to derail the treaty. The Scottish Parliament, swayed by financial incentives and political pressure, ratified the treaty in January 1707. Critics claimed that the decision-makers were bought and sold for English gold, a sentiment immortalised by Robert Burns in his poem Such a Parcel of Rogues in a Nation. Even after the Union was enacted, discontent simmered. Many Scots felt alienated by the new political arrangement, particularly as it became clear that English interests dominated decision-making. The sense of betrayal lingered for generations, influencing everything from cultural expression to political movements, including the later rise of Jacobitism. The events in Dumfries exemplify the fierce opposition that the Treaty of Union faced from ordinary Scots. While the treaty ultimately came into effect, the symbolic act of burning it underscored the depth of resistance and the enduring belief in Scotland's right to self-determination. Today, the Union remains a subject of debate in Scotland, particularly in light of recent movements advocating for independence. The events of November 20th, 1706 remind us of the deep historical roots of this debate and the enduring spirit of those who stood against the loss of Scotland's sovereignty. Thank you for joining us on this journey into Scotland's past. Tune in tomorrow for another fascinating episode of This Day in Scottish History. I'm Colin MacDonald, and until next time, haste ye back.